Please like and subscribe, and head over to prophotoedits.com where you can download my Photoshop actions and Lightroom presets and follow along. So hey, today I wanted to show you guys how the Nikon Z6 and Z7 fared at low light night shooting. I was just testing it out on some neon shots with a friend of mine, and I'm using the FTZ adapter and recording everything through the lens, and then we're going to do an edit on the lighter shot, since everyone's been asking how I did that. And they fared relatively well. Face detect, there was a little bit of hunting. I'm using the 85 1.4G for this particular series. And this shot right here, I just edited with my preset in my bundle. It's the Neon is the name of the preset, and I made that just for you guys. It's kind of like a bonus for doing night photography with neon signs. It's pretty epic, blue and red tones. I use it on pretty much all my neon shots. So I just wanted to push the limit a little bit. I can't use face detect with this particular scenario because I was just using spot and then moving it over her eye, and I was using the Art 35 1.4 for this shot, and I wanted to get a little bit of the neon sign in the background as well, just for some added color. And I just had this neon flexible tube that I was shooting through, just trying to push it to its limits and see how many shots I could get in focus with all these extra distractions and it being late like this outside. And I'll say it fared well. It fared really well. Not quite as well as my D850, but at least I'm getting to see my exposure the way I want to see it. And these two shots were also just with the neon preset in the bundle, and just having a little bit of fun for you guys. So for the cigarette lighter shot, I just wanted to give you guys a little back story on how to do this, if you don't already know. So I'm using the 35 for this one on the FTZ adapter, and I'm using the Z7 for this. But you see how the shadows and the glasses and stuff, so the light is your source, just like any light would be. And I asked her to pull her chin down a touch, because what I wanted to do was not get so much of the shadows from her glasses, and I don't want to uplight her. See how she has her head back and the light's going up and making her look kind of evil. So I just asked her to lean in a little bit, put her chin down just a touch, so I could remove a lot of the shadows, and right there is what you want. Chin down, the light is hitting her face just right. Alright, so let's get into how we edited this image. Alright, so I have the raw files for you guys to download this, and you can edit along with me if you want. And this is with my Z7. I had the Z6 with me as well, but I use the Z7 a lot just because I have my HDMI out screen recording going on there, so you guys can see what we're doing. So let's get into it. Here you go. Obviously, I shoot usually at Kelvin 4900 on the white balance instead of doing auto white balance. That's just my personal preference. And you can see how when you import things on the Z7 and Z6 as well, it has baked in like noise reduction, things that I typically will never use because it'll mess your skin up. So anytime I import anything, I just go ahead and use one of my presets, because I made them for editing photos, and it gets rid of all that junk too. So anyway, what I did when I chose this one was I was going down through and I used PPE Set 2 Toning 12 film, and it had just a little bit of the grain that I wanted, and you can see as I go through some of the others, I was just basically just picking something that I'd like for myself. So this one's where I started, and I always shoot underexposed. So one thing I really did with this was I boosted the exposure up until I got right around there. And you see I shot with the neon in the background, because when you're out at night, you have to be very picky about what type of light you're letting in the frame. She had the cool fur top on her jacket, and then you can see some of the red and the green coming from the neon sign, doing a little bit of backlighting, as if it was hair back there. And so that's where we started with that, and then I took this into Photoshop, and actually I bumped the exposure up just a slight bit more, like 1.35 from 1.05, before we went into Photoshop. So this is what we took in. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this edit. I'm just going to redo it exactly how I have it in my PSD backup. Okay, I got to get my screen going. Okay, duplicate your background layer. That's Command J, or you can just click on it and hit duplicate layer, so you won't be editing your background if you ever need to go back to that. So what we're going to do first is all the boring stuff, and I'll probably skip through this and do a voiceover as I'm going. I start with the spot healing brush tool a lot of the times for this type of thing, whenever you have wild crazy hair, and I just mouse over top of it and get rid of the hair that I don't want. And it does a pretty good job. I'm going to leave a lot of that hair up there just because it'll turn into a mess if I remove it, and it's just a fun picture, so I don't want to go too crazy with it. And then I start to use the patch tool for areas where you just have certain things you want to remove. Now this is just my preference on how I do this type of stuff. This is just the first part of how we're going to edit like this. There's a lot of other things we're going to fix as the edit progresses. With my action sets as we always use. And okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to duplicate this again. So if I mess up on this part, because this can be a little tricky. She didn't like them. I didn't like the laugh lines. And as you can see, we got rid of them for the most part. So I'm going to speed this up for you guys so you don't have to sit here for a long time. All I'm doing is using the patch tool, and I'm just grabbing the laugh lines and dragging them off to another area of skin. You always want to drag to somewhere that's lighter. And do this on its own layer in case you mess up, because it can take a few tries. But the next part of the process with the frequency separation and the skin perfection actions that I have, we're going to fix anything that's wrong. Like I said, this is a fun fantasy style edit, and we're just going to have fun with it and make it look exactly how it did in the original picture I took. And you guys have the raw file, so you can put it in Lightroom and do exactly what I'm doing right now. Okay, so now that we got that done, what we want to do is go up to the Pro Photo Edit actions that I made for you guys, and frequency separation. We're going to run that first, and it'll just tell you what to do, but I'll tell you what we should do. So I'm going to leave this one at 10 for the radius. 10 is fine. And just hit OK. That's typically where I leave it. The lower frequency layer, we want to go up here to our lasso tool, and we have this feather set on 10 pix. This is where we're going to use 10 pixels since we use 10 on the radius. If you use 8 on the radius, you set this to 8. And now what we're going to do is we're just going to circle an area of the skin like that. Filter, go down to blur, Gaussian blur, and it's going to select a radius. 4:9 is where I hang out sometimes. On something like this, it's more like a fantasy edit. I'll go up a bit just because it's a fantasy edit. Start around 8. And I have some grain in there as well, and you can just hit this again from the top, so you don't have to do it every single time you run it. Now, since I'm doing this fast for you guys, you can take a little bit more time and maybe do your skin the way you edit. I do a lot of times different, So for this, I'd go back down to blur, Gaussian blur, instead of running it again, and choose, 7 or something else. So it's not every time exactly the same. I'm gonna hit this upper lip again. It looks pretty good. Normally I do the fingers and the hands and everything like this, but like I said, this is just like a fantasy edit. And I'll hit this hair one quick time, even though it's just hair. And I'll use my Gaussian blur, and I'll bring this down to about 3. Because her hair is out of focus anyway. Actually, I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to go even lower. Because I don't want the hair to be distracting. It's already out of focus. 1.4. I mean, will you even notice that? I doubt it, but I'm kind of anal about this stuff. Alright, so now that we have this layer at the top, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to Stamp Visible Layer. And that's Command-Alt-Shift-E. And this will just give you a layer of everything and one editable layer on top. And now we're going to go to Skin Perfection. Run this action. This is how you really get things looking absolutely perfect. I don't use it on images like this as much. We'll do it a lot on the portrait stuff, the stuff that I do for publications and stuff like that. But this is just a fun edit, since everybody asked how I do this. Now on something that's really underexposed like this, and at night, you want to pull your res up on your helper layer. You mess with your greens, pull them up. Just so, this is just helping you see where the shadows are at, because you're going to draw them away. Okay, it's not. We're not going to leave that on for anything other than to just help us see what we're doing. So you want to go to your brush tool and set your opacity at 70, flow at 1. Make sure you have white selected as your color to draw away the shadows. And it's okay, buddy. That's my dog in the background. He's not happy to be in here with me today while we're editing. I'm gonna go ahead and turn on this pointer so you can actually see what I'm doing. Alright, so now we're just gonna go in here and I'm gonna zoom in even further for you guys and see how these gradients are a little bit darker here. Just gonna draw over these. Make sure you're on your gray layer, and draw away the shadow areas a bit. Until the gradient's a little bit smoother. See how we're getting a little bit of a shadow area here. This is just with any person's face, you're going to have shadow areas. And this kind of gives you the Russian look, as people like to call it. And there's like a whole course online about how to edit like the Russians. I mean, they're the very best in the world. But, you know, people lie to you and say, hey, you can just put a preset on it. You cannot. They spend a ton of time on the skin. And it's nothing that I can make money doing. Doing the Russian technique, it's just fun and it looks pretty. But when I'm doing stuff for like magazines and editorial stuff like that, it's going to stand the test of time, because we might look back in 10 or 15 years and at these images that people are kind of overdoing, and it'll still be a beautiful image, but less is more sometimes. I say that as we're doing a fantasy edit, right? Some capacity. I've went further and done more fantasy than this, and did the whole plastic look before, just to have a little bit of fun with stuff. And people, they always tend to really like that stuff on Instagram. But as far as my portfolio, I like to do things that are going to stand the test of time. So like I said, this is just a fun image that people have been asking me, how did you do that? How did you do that? So I wanted to give you the whole rundown. And thank you guys for supporting and buying the actions and the presets. I've been getting a lot of great feedback, and I'm gonna keep doing these videos for you guys. And since I'm doing shoots all the time anyway, I might as well just record some of the through the lens stuff, and I'm going to edit the images anyway. I have so many ready for you guys this year. With the Z7, Z6, D850. I'm going to upload a video actually with this model from where we almost died. Matt Granger selected it as one of his top photos from last year. We were on top of a mountain in a parachute dress, about a 300-foot drop. It was kind of crazy, but I have that up for you guys. So I'm not going to talk your head off. All I'm doing right now is just running through here with this brush and hitting all the dark areas. Now you see here on top of her mouth where she's kind of smirking a little bit. I'm not going to run through that crazy with this tool. I'll show you how to get rid of things like that when you're doing. You won't ever run into this unless you're doing like night photography or really high shadow stuff, which basically would be night photography. Okay, so occasionally just zoom out, turn off your helper layer. See, you can see what we're getting rid of right now. And you can turn off your helper layer and then look and see what you're actually removing. See what I'm saying? How this starts to make people look. So I call it skin perfection. It makes things look perfect. And perfect is sometimes considered to be fake, but this is a fantasy edit, so we don't care. You just have to use the process. And as you go, you can pull your reds back down so you can sort of see even more of the shadows and help you get rid of as much as you want in this particular scenario. So my channel isn't like going to be a review channel or anything like that. I'm just going to help people try to, fast track it so they can have fun making art instead of telling you guys about all the on paper review of this and that, and there's a million people that do that, and that's boring. That's not what I like to do. I like to get out and create art, and I spend a lot of time learning how to do this and being frustrated, and that's why I put these packages together for you guys, so you don't have to like waste years of your life trying to figure out how to get the results you want. You'll start to see the process and how you start to see the images through your lens and say, I know how I'm going to edit this. I'm very comfortable and confident with my process, and I know how I want to shoot it. You shoot differently when you know you're confident in how you like to edit and the way you like to work. You see things differently. So I'm going to try to teach you guys as much as I can on both sides for anybody that's struggling. And if you're not struggling, then maybe you just want to see, how someone else does their, point A to point B, and might give you some fresh ideas. I mean, I look at other people's work all the time to get ideas. That's how we do it. Alright, so that's as much as I'm going to do here. You can sit there and go crazy if you want. I might hit this area right here a bit. But I'm going to show you in the next step how I get anything that's not totally perfect there on these edits that are kind of a fantasy look. So there we go. That's what we fixed. Looks a lot more pleasant, right? Okay, so if you want to get rid of this stuff over the lips, there's an easy way to do this. You go down here to this, which is a new layer. Click on it. It'll give it to you. Get your pen tool, the same what we've been using, and you want to choose. Hold down your Alt key and choose a color that's close, but not on the darker part of the gradient, just a little bit lighter, and then it'll set it as your background. And if you hit X, it'll pull it to the foreground, and that's where you're going to want to choose from. Okay, now your opacity should be 15%, flow should be 15%. It's just 15 on both, and you can zoom in. Now that you have this color, sorry, it's not letting me change the size of my brush. Okay, and you can just go over top of the these areas, and all you're doing right now is you're painting. You're using the color and you're painting over top of. And you don't have to use any special blending mode or anything like that for this. You just want to be not so heavy-handed, and choosing your color accurately is important. And when you get done, you can just change the opacity of the layer. Yeah, that's how I did it. And like I said, I'm not going to spend a ton of time doing that, but you can go in there and just spend as much time as you want drawing that away, and it'll get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter. And like if I was doing this for real the way I did it the first time, I'd spend a little bit more time drawing on this area to get these to match. And as you can see, as I go and draw more and more, that area will match. And your image probably won't have this issue. I would have had her lean her head down just a slight bit more. But there you go. So now we've gotten rid of that. Okay. Let's fix the eyes. You see how, since this image is very much a warmer tone, we need to go down to eyes and smile whiter. Run that action. It'll tell you what to do, but I'm going to tell you what to do here. 100% on opacity, 100% on the flow. Make sure you have white as your color, and you're going to want to go into the whites of the eyes, and this works on all pictures, and you're going to erase, or I should say draw white over the whites of the eye, and it'll get rid of any color cast that's in the eye. Yeah, so we have a lot of color cast going on right now. It's okay, Moose. Moose. You can spend as much time getting that perfect as you want. So now, got her eyes being white again. I will turn that down just a touch, the opacity down just a touch, because I don't want her to have maybe like 55. That'll be fine. Okay, so now to the fun part. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go to Dodging Method 2, and we're going to draw on some highlights. Now whenever you select this, click on this your mask right here. It's already going to select your dodge tool, and it's going to give you the shadows and the exposure exactly where you need to be. So the only thing you need to do is adjust the size of your pen. I'm just going to kind of follow where the highlights are down the nose and get smaller each swipe, just like building up under the eyes, and get smaller each swipe, under the eyes, smaller each swipe. I hit the lips a little bit to pop them out. The chin. You know, there's light going up the face. It's following the trail of the lighter. So you just want to accentuate that a little bit. Don't go crazy on an edit like this. And if you're having issues where you have areas that are still a little bit too dark, you can actually draw over them with this action as well and get rid of them. Sometimes I do that. I just go by eye. It's like anything. It's never going to be identical twice, but it's going to be as close as humanly possible since I'm the one who did it. I know how to do it again. All right. So now that we've put some highlights on her face, that looks really cool. So what we're going to do right now is this. We're going to stamp visible again. Alt Apple Shift E, Alt Command Shift E. I guess if you're on a PC, I'm using a Mac, so I'm not terribly sure how that is. And what I did was I ran my mellow. Now this is a color toning. This is a color toning action that I have. It's called mellow, PPE. So run that. And this is another way to color tone. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of those that I've made for you guys. This is another way of toning in an action form instead of doing it by hand that I've done. I use this a lot. And the exposure help part of this action, I don't really ever use this part of it. I like to do my exposures manually, and this will just show you what's going on in here. This is your split toning, and you have your blues as well. So I have the blues underneath, I have the golds on top, and let's bring the gold opacity down just a touch. I have my hues, my curves, my color balance. I put a photo filter on there for you guys. This is a pretty unique way to tone. And now what I did at the end of this, just to give it a little bit, and I'll include this in the download as well of when I give you the raw file, so you guys can do this. Neon flare that I found online, and you can do this any way you want. I just put it over here in the corner, stretched it out across her face a little bit, put it back here, and then when you're done, you just want to go to screen and screen it in, and I think, yeah, I think I actually made it a little bit bigger. So Command T will open up your free transform again, so you can resize things as you want, and then place them where you want. I had it kind of not going over her eye, but on the side of her face a little bit. And you can either manually mask these out, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to transform it again and just pull it all the way off the edge of the photo, so I don't have to do any gradient, too much gradient work. I will put a gradient on it because I don't want this haze to go completely over the photo. So what I'll do is I'll bring down the opacity a touch, go down here, add a layer mask. I'm going to go up to where the paint bucket is and choose gradient tool. And if you use the gradient tool and you have a layer mask, if you swipe this way, it's going to, I'll show you over here, it's going to just sort of mask this in at an angle. So you can kind of give it a long angle, and now it looks more like a flare, and it's kind of fading out as we go. If I did it just real short, it kind of cut it off right there, which you just get creative with it. Have fun and figure out where you like it to land. I would probably leave it think that's pretty similar to how I had it. And then I turned the opacity down on that a touch. And what you can also do, here's another cool tip, is if you hit Command U and you're on your actual overlay, it'll open your hue saturation just for that overlay. So now you can change the color. Command U. My computer's probably running slow since I'm doing a screen recording. You can change the hue. See, I just did it. So now that's where I had it. I like that contrast. You could go and make it purple if you wanted to, but I think that's too much of the same. I had it over here a little bit more with the green tones, and then you can change the saturation, pull the saturation of it down a bit. I may have done that. You can bring the lightness of it up. I wouldn't do that since it's a layer mask. I would just zero this out. Sorry, 0. Okay. Hit OK. And it'll put that where it needs to be. So the only other thing I'd really do here, guys, is this. I'd go up here to Eye Sharper, run that action. I wouldn't do too much work inside the eyes on a photo like this, because you don't want to make it look super spaced out and over the top. It already is a fantasy style edit. You can get wild if you want to, like certain people do, but I choose not to. 75% opacity, 100% flow. White is your color. Yes, I want to resize that. And you want to just paint over the eyes, eyelids, all of that area, and it's going to make the eye sharper and just draw people in a bit more. If you wanted to accentuate the iris a bit, you could go down to the action I have that I use a lot for that is dodging method 2, the same way that I do my highlights, and just go in and kind of draw over top of where the catch light would be, and it'll brighten that a bit. I wouldn't do much. I personally would turn that way down, just because this isn't really the super in focus broad daylight image where you can really go in on the eyes when you're getting a natural, catch light in the eyes and you want to really make that your focus. This is more like a fantasy edit. And if you find that you went too far, say with the dodging, okay, so now the only thing left to do is sharpen it. Go to stage sharpening, run that action, and it's going to sharpen it on 4 different frequencies, all at different amounts, and going to put it in a nice little neat folder for you, and the image will be nice and sharp, and it won't be all crunchy and weird looking. It'll sharpen the brightest parts of the image the most, and then work its way down to give you a nice clear sharp image. See, this wasn't this hard, guys. This was kind of fun. I don't do as much fantasy stuff like this, just because I'm booked for a lot of fashion editorial and just portrait work and just fun stuff. This is fun too. So there you go, before and after. You probably can't see that on YouTube, but it really did sharpen the glasses a lot, and it really made it pop out. And you can just pull the opacity of this whole entire folder down where it did all the different sharpenings. You can pull the opacity down to where you're satisfied with. And there you have it. I'll upload the raw of this so you guys can mess with my actions, and I'll upload the the flare as well that I found online, so you guys can mess with that. And I'll see you next edit. Thank you guys. Actually, let's go ahead and group all this stuff together. Apple G, and see where we started from as we came in with just the action, the preset that we used, and then after we did our Photoshop stuff with my action set, that's where we're at. All right, see you guys next time.